Just a quick little intro and then we'll go right into it.
All right.
Your personal story was very inspiring to me when we met. It's still inspiring to me.
Oh,
And I think that everything that you have to share about who you are, what you're up to in the world is really effective and really changing lives. So, why don't we start with when you were 18?
all righty. Well, thank you so much, Holly. So when I was younger, this is a little bit before 18, but when I was younger, I was always just fascinated with labor and birth. And in my youth, before I was even a teenager, I enjoyed watching those TLC shows about labor and birth. You
Mm,
remember the ones I'm talking about?
yeah.
Yeah, they were always so fascinating to me. And I didn't know that I would end up here until I had my own personal experience. And when I was 16, surprisingly enough, a lot of my extended family members don't know this, but it is my story and it's nothing that I'm no longer ashamed of. So I do want to share it with you. So when I was 16, I was pregnant by my middle school sweetheart, and I didn't know much about anything, but I knew I wanted to have my baby. My parents, they thought I was completely out of my mind, of course.
Mm.
But after the hurt, the shame, and the disappointment, their love definitely conquered all. And they were ready to support me in my decision.
Mm.
So I really wish that the doctors that I experienced during that time in my life had the same type of compassion my parents did, but they did not. They made me feel like everything was my fault and that I should not have got myself into the situation to begin with. So I felt mistreated and unsupported, and no pregnant woman or girl should ever have to experience that, no matter what their situation is. So, unfortunately, the pregnancy did end in a miscarriage,
Mm.
and I was completely devastated. But I did not really heal from that experience, and I did not realize that I did not heal until 10 years later when I became pregnant again with my first son.
Mm.
So, a lot of emotions, feelings, insecurities came up immediately once that positive test came back, and I was scared.
Mm.
I was afraid that, this would happen again, or I would have to experience the same type of doctors again. And I was not prepared for that. So with the support of my family, my husband, and my faith, I was able to heal in a healthy way during my pregnancy. And then I started my research. I started to research how I could get the natural, holistic pregnancy, labor, birth experience that I was dreaming of.
Mm.
So I found a midwife in Wellington, Nakia Phillips. I told her what happened. She was very empathetic with me. She understood where I was coming from, and together we worked to make my vision a reality. I wanted to have a unmedicated natural childbirth, and we did everything in our power to make that safely happen. I was in the hospital for my first birth, and that was due to gestational diabetes. I originally wanted a home birth, but the standard and the recommendations are to be monitored with gestational diabetes. Therefore, I was in a hospital setting, but the Wellington staff was superb. They were very surprised because they had not seen a birth plan that was so detailed, and they respected that and appreciated it and valued what our wishes were, and they made it happen. It was a beautiful hospital birth,
Wow.
And that kind of started my journey, because I realized that a lot of people do not know their options when it comes to labor, birth, choosing a provider. A lot of people did not know that. So shortly after I had my son, I decided to start looking into becoming a birth worker. So I found a program that I connected with deeply, that I felt like understood what I was trying to do in the community. And I started my certification to be a full spectrum doula. And what I learned in the beginning of my certification is what lit a fire under me. I learned that Black and Brown women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die during childbirth. And our babies are 2 times more likely to die within weeks of being born compared to white families. And that affected me deeply. It hurt me. It made me angry. And I am determined to change these statistics, because most of these deaths are preventable if they have advocacy and education to know what to look for and support in those settings.
Hmm.
So, as I was going through my certification, I did become pregnant again. My children are 16 months apart.
Wow.
So so I became pregnant again, and this time I definitely knew, with my education, with everything that I've learned in my certification program, that I want to have my home birth. So I did find a home birth midwife, Michelle Sarami, at East Coast Midwifery, and we had the most amazing, beautiful, perfect. A lot of people can't say their birth was perfect. My home birth was perfect. And it was the best thing that I ever did. And ever since then, I have been out here educating families and advocating for families to experience birth in the way that they want to.
Hmm. Okay, so there was a 10-year span between your first pregnancy and your second pregnancy. So you were 26 in your second pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
You worked through a bunch of things. I've experienced a miscarriage before, but I didn't go full term. The way that I found out that I was pregnant was by miscarriage.
Mm.
So for me, I can't imagine what it would be like to carry full term, miscarry at birth. I know that this is something that a lot of women experience. When you're young, you're resilient, you just kind of like move forward, especially after the traumatic experience that you had in the hospital of being unsupported and all of the things that you experienced then. The second time around, you said during that pregnancy, a lot of those things came up.
Mm-hmm.
So, what were some of the things that were the most prominent for you that came up that you were like, man, I'm just really struggling over this, where your husband or your family, your doula, came in and supported you and quelled those fears?
So I did not carry full term. I miscarried in my first trimester.
Oh, okay.
But there was a lot that happened in my first trimester that did make it feel like it was longer than those few weeks. But fears and insecurities that came up for me was essentially my womanhood. I felt like, what if I can't do this? What if it's not meant for me to birth children? And what if is my body working against me? I'm getting chills now, because those are some dark questions to go through, and to challenge yourself, and even to challenge God in that way.
They really are, because I know I find myself thinking those things. And that's been something that I have come to believe is like a truth, almost like
Mhm.
a truthful question. That
Mhm.
it's like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to have children.
Mhm.
And those thoughts, they seem so normal and
Mhm.
natural
Mhm.
that they're almost indistinguishable from the truth. And if somebody were to tell you, oh, no, don't think that because we don't know if that's the truth,
Mhm.
it's like, well, but we don't know if that's the truth. So
Yeah.
it's such a
Yeah.
protection mechanism. How did you get over that?
Therapy.
Mm,
Therapy, support from my family was essential during my second pregnancy with my son. It was necessary. I had to learn new coping mechanisms,
mm,
and I had to learn to trust myself and trust my body and trust my baby also,
mm,
that we're going to get through this.
mm.
And that's what helped the most. My second pregnancy, I did not have access to a doula at that time. That was because I was learning still as well. If I would have had more education, which is what I'm trying to provide to everybody else, then I would have definitely made sure that I had a doula present for my second pregnancy.
Mm. All right. Why don't we get into the terms birth worker and doula?
Yes,
When I
yes.
met you, you were a doula, and now there's a bit more emphasis on birth worker.
hmm
So, which one is it?
So I am trying to eliminate the word doula from my vocabulary because the origin of doula in Greek means female slave, and
Hmm.
we are far beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
So, birth worker is a term that has already been out there. It's just what I'm trying to replace the word doula with. And we can use birth worker, birth guide, birth keeper, womb protector. All of these things signify what we are doing as doulas, but we're just trying to get away from the negative connotation of the word doula.
Yeah, I get it. The and this was really interesting to me because when I had first heard the word doula years and years and years and years ago, it was I first of all, I didn't know what a doula was, but I had this sense that there was some like almost like a black magic attached to it. Like maybe back in the day there was some sort of I don't know, some sort of like witchcraft or sorcery attached to it. Maybe I don't know. Um but I guess in the States that could have been a thing because it was a southern thing.
Yeah, yeah. So when it comes to black magic, doula and midwives back in the day were viewed in that way. And
Ah.
it's interesting because there was no black magic or, potions and things that were being made up. It was because there was a lack of understanding. How are
Mm.
these women able to guide other women through birth? How is that happening? So, because of the lack of understanding and just not knowing, it was deemed as something that was dark and black magic. But it's not. The teas that my great great grandparents drank to prepare themselves for pregnancy are the same things that I would offer my clients today. And that's just knowing the anatomy of the body and knowing what the body needs to get through pregnancy, labor, and birth.
That's so interesting. The power of our words and the power
Mhm.
of spoken history
Mhm.
and legends and
Yes.
how it gets into the minds of little ones because this didn't
Mhm.
start when I was an adult. This started when I was a child. So
Mhm.
now we're going by birth worker or birth
Yes.
guide. Words matter.
Yes.
Titles matter. They do.
Mhm.
All right, so let's switch gears into hospital and home birthing. You had a suboptimal experience in the hospital as a young person.
Mhm.
You had a super optimal experience at home, but you also recognize that there were some things in the hospital that made a lot of sense for you
Mhm.
because you had I'll call it a medical issue, gestational diabetes.
Mhm.
So let's go through some like benefits and disadvantages of both the hospital and home birthing.
So when it comes to the hospital staff are ultimately trained to prepare for the worst, which is why there is constant monitoring of the mom and of the baby. So if a problem looks like it's approaching, doctors and nurses are ready to intervene. So using the acronym BRAIN is very beneficial when birthing in a hospital setting. And BRAIN stands for, what are the benefits? What are the risks? What are my alternatives? What is my intuition telling me? And what happens if I do nothing? So, going through that list of questions with your providers anytime really helps, but especially in a hospital setting when interventions are being spoken of. So when it comes to being in a hospital setting, the benefit of it is that you are around trained medical professionals with equipment that will be prepared to save your life and your baby's life if there is a medical emergency. That is the biggest benefit of being in a hospital setting, as well as the monitoring can be a benefit, but it also can be, the saying, when you're looking for something, you're going to find something.
Yeah.
So so it can work against as well if the hospital staff and the doctor is not willing to just allow the body to kind of regroup itself. And it does. The baby and moms sometimes need a break during labor. It's nothing wrong, but baby needs to rest, mom needs to rest. So that's what the pause is for.
What is the pause?
The pause is when it comes to the monitoring. So sometimes we will see no movement from the baby,
Hmm.
or that mom heart rate has slowed or is not at its normal rate, or something of that nature. So during that time, we take a few deep breaths, we regather ourselves, we regroup ourselves, maybe have something to eat, which is not something that the hospital staff wants. But when you think about it, our food is our fuel.
Yeah.
So pregnant women need something in their system to keep them going, and because they're burning a lot of energy. So there are different things that I see from a different lens than the hospital staff, and those things can tell me what my parents are needing. So it might be, if the sugar has dropped, mom needs something to eat. Or what the hospital staff will do is get a glucose bag run through the IV to boost the sugar levels. And usually the energy picks right back up from that. But before we intervene with Pitocin or even an emergency C-section, what are some things that we can do to prevent a traumatic experience? And just giving us, it doesn't have to be a long amount of time, 20-30 minutes, and then let's see what happens. Let's see if the contractions or the surges are picking back up. But for right now, let's get this mama something to eat, and let's give her the opportunity to rest, because that's what her body is telling her that she needs to do right
Brie, I am already freaking out.
now.
What is happening? What is happening?
Don't freak out.
Okay. All right. So the pause is okay. If the baby, if there's like a lull in movement in the baby, it's
Hmm.
because the baby needs to be resting.
It could be.
It
It
could
could be.
be. How do you know
Yes.
if it is?
So my intuition and
Okay.
the mom's instincts, because I'm not a medical provider, so
Mm.
I can only say so much, and I can't necessarily give medical advice, but I can ask the questions to get alternatives.
Hmm.
And even during those lines of questions, in those couple of minutes, we can see a difference in the baby immediately if it is not a true medical emergency. So we're talking about if the baby's heart rate decelerates, and that usually happens for a quick moment. It's a quick moment, but it is a ding to the hospital staff, it is a ding to the doctors that something is wrong. And what babies are so smart, even in the womb they are so smart. So that D cell could have been that they are uncomfortable or that something is wrong, but is the child going to be able to move around or untangle themselves from the umbilical cord, and things of that nature? And does the D cell last, or does the baby recover quickly? And
Hmm.
if we're seeing a decel then a rise, and we're staying on a rise, then everything is fine. We just had a moment of uncomfortability or
Hmm.
discomfort.
Hmm.
And it
Okay.
makes a difference. It makes a difference. A lot of the times, sometimes providers are quick to rush to the ultimate alternative, which is an emergency C-section. But if we have the opportunity just for a couple of minutes, not anything long, because if there is a problem, then we do want to address it quickly. But
Hmm.
just for a couple of minutes while we're sitting here talking, what's the difference that we see in the mom, and what's the difference that we see in the baby? Can we give this more time, or is it a true emergency?
Hmm. Bree, I'm so glad that you're here with me in this conversation because I'm feeling better already.
That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for. Oh.
Okay. All right. So, home birthing. What are some advantages or benefits and disadvantages of home birthing?
All right. So home births are extremely beneficial to the parents for many reasons. They're already in their home in a safe environment, which lowers stress and boosts oxytocin.
Hmm.
And oxytocin is the happy hormone that we need produced during labor and childbirth. So we get an automatic stress relief and oxytocin boost in a home setting because moms feel safe. Parents have the freedom to move around because they aren't connected to all of these monitors. There's no limit on how many people you can have present. In the
Hmm.
hospital setting, there's usually only two people that can be present. And depending on the hospital, sometimes that one of those people are your doula.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of choices that have to go behind who you're going to have present in your
Hmm.
hospital birth. Because of course, a lot of first time moms want their partner there and their mom there
Hmm.
as well. So when you're at home, you can have everybody if you want to. And you also have the freedom to tell everybody to leave if you're like, okay, this is a bad idea to have my sisters, cousins, mama. You can tell them to leave if it becomes too overwhelming. The disadvantages of birthing at home is that when it comes to pain relief and pain management or comfort management, there are no medical drugs that can help you, like the epidural or the narcotics or opiates that they will give you in the IV. Those are not available in home births. Some midwives will provide laughing gas at the most, and that will take off the edge for a moment, but you will still be in the process and feeling that intensity. So even though those pain relief options are not available at a home birth, what we as birth workers or midwives do is we offer affirmations, visualizations, hydrotherapy, massage, hypnobirthing techniques to help parents ground and recenter themselves. And it works. It works because when we think about it, the contraction or the surge is for 1 minute long. And one of my favorite affirmations is I can do anything for 1 minute. So if I can take a deep breath and breathe and work with my body through this minute, and then I have a great break in between. Because during that break, you go right back to yourself. If you in a mid conversation, you go right back to having that conversation and enjoying your loved ones. It's just that 1 minute. And it does get more intense as we get closer to transition, and as we get closer to bringing the baby earth side. But again, we just recenter, we ground, we think of the end goal of holding our baby, and we push through it and we get there.
That sounds beautiful. People have been having babies for millennia before the
Yes.
epidurals, before, well, I don't know about before the opiates because, well, not everybody had opiates available or maybe
Mhm.
knew about opiates, but
Mhm.
people have been having babies for millennia. And I think the survival rate has increased significantly because
Mhm.
we have science and tested modalities,
Mhm.
right? We have people who have studied this and have lots of different experience, but
Mhm.
I'm sure all of those folks back then, every mother was a doula
Yes.
or a
Yes.
birth worker. Every
Mhm.
sister was a birth worker because
Mhm.
that's the families and the tribes. This is what everybody did together.
Yes. Yes, most definitely. That's how it used to be. Home births were absolutely normal. Absolutely normal. It was normal for the mom, even the grandma, to come over and to stay with the new parents for 40 days.
Wow.
And we've gotten away from that because of society. Now,
They can't
we're
afford
in.
to.
Yes, I was just about to say we're more in a working society. Like we need more things in life, which requires both parties in the household to work now. So there is a lack of availability when it comes to even support from your family, which is where birth workers come in to feel that need.
Yeah. Okay. So, what are some options that birthing mothers aren't typically aware of? Let's say in the hospital.
That's a great question. In the hospital setting, parents are not usually aware that you can decline vaccinations. You
Hmm.
don't, because the hospital staff, some hospital staff will make it seem as if you need to get them or if you have to get them, but it's an option. So you can decline vaccinations after you do your own research and find out what works best for your family. You can decline having the baby bathe in the first 24 hours. And that is because when the baby first comes out, they have vernix on their skin. Vernix is a protective layer. It's like a Vaseline almost. That's what it kind of looks like. But it is a protective layer that dissolves into the baby's skin and into the mom's skin when they're doing skin to skin, which increases bonding because that familiar scent is going to be there. So you can decline to have the baby bathe in the first 24 hours. You can wear your own clothing. That's you don't have to wear the hospital gown. You can purchase something that you will be empowered in. And as long as it opens in the front and in the back, it is acceptable to wear in the hospital. Um, I would say one more thing that people are becoming more and more aware of is that you can take your placenta with you no matter what. A lot of the times, some hospital staff will discourage parents to take their placenta because it is a kind of new practice. But when it comes to parents taking their placenta, it's their organ. It's their organ and it's their right. And they don't even have to encapsulate it. They can bury it. They can have a ceremony to give it back to Mother Nature, or to a ceremony to signify them grounding or centering their own child. So there's a lot of things that you can do with your placenta, and it's such a special organ because it developed for your child, and it provided so much love and protection and nutrients and everything that the baby needed to survive and thrive within you for almost 10 months. So just imagine what it can do outside of the womb for you, for the mom now.
What can it do outside of the womb? Because you mentioned placenta encapsulation.
Hmm.
And when I first heard of this, I was like, okay, gross and weird. And what is this?
Yes, yes. So, placenta encapsulation is the holistic process of consuming your placenta in a vitamin form after birth. There are tons of benefits that come from consuming your placenta, especially as long as you had a healthy pregnancy, healthy baby, and everything of that nature. So the placenta is packed with nutrients, minerals, vitamins, oxytocin, iron, and B12. So when you consume it, you're putting all of those vitamins and minerals and nutrients and iron back into your body. So this helps bringing your mature breast milk supply quicker. It helps balancing out hormones, which is very beneficial because when it comes to the baby blues or postpartum depression, that's an imbalance. And when you are putting your placenta back into your body through the encapsulation, you're putting all of those hormones back in your body to help rebalance everything, so you do not have to experience the baby blues or postpartum depression. And then because you're getting all of this stuff back in your body, you also have an energy boost. So it doesn't, you don't feel as tired or as exhausted as some moms do within those first couple of weeks. And with the iron levels that are in your placenta or through the encapsulation process, it helps boost your iron back up as well, because you do lose a lot of blood during childbirth.
What do these pills taste like?
That is a great question. And I think that is, what everybody thinks. They're going to taste their placenta because it's in a capsule. It's just like you're taking any other vitamin. So you're not going to taste it. You don't taste your placenta. Now there are some people who ask for the placenta powder or placenta chunks, and the powder is going to definitely have a, I would say, an iron taste to it.
Hmm.
And they use the powder to either for plants, to fertilize plants, or to put in their smoothies.
Huh.
So that's why people would ask for the powder, and then the chunks are usually used for smoothies.
That's a disgusting word.
Placenta chunks.
Ugh. All right. Okay. And thank you for listening. And hey, if you heard anything educational, inspirational, or encouraging today, and you want more people to have the opportunity to hear it as well, please make sure that you subscribe, rate and review, and share. And as always, thank you for your support and for being the change that you want to see in the world.